Welcome back to Only Talk Sports. And we talk sports every single day, or at least we try to. I'm your host, Jeffrey. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Hit that notification bell so you never miss another video. The North Carolina Tar Heels, they're trying to put their bad season from last year where they missed the NCAA tournament behind them, and they just got some unbelievable news that should help them out this next season in college basketball. Elliot Cadeau, a top point guard in the 2024 recruiting class, he has decided to reclassify to the North Carolina Tar Heels for 2023. I'm going to go over whether I think Elliot Cadeau can have a big impact on North Carolina next season and whether I think that the Tar Heels could be a legitimate ACC title contender with this news. Now, Elliot Cadeau, he's a top point guard recruit in the 2024 class. A lot of people think that he's possibly the best point guard in 2024. There's a few other point guards that are really solid as well, but Elliot Cadeau has a lot of talent. The one thing that is knocked against him is that he is really undersized. He's only 6'1". Some sites list him at 6'2", and he's only around 170 pounds, so he's definitely going to have to gain some weight if he wants to have success at the Power 6 level in college basketball. You just can't bang around in college basketball when you are underweight, but I do think that Elliot Cadeau's speed makes up for it. He is a fairly quick player. He's a really solid three-point shooter, and he's a great facilitator, something that I think will really help the Tar Heels out next year because North Carolina was a team that was not a great passing team because Caleb Love, a player that is no longer on the North Carolina Tar Heels roster, a player that irked a lot of Tar Heel fans due to his ball-dominant nature and the fact that he was really turnover-prone, and RJ Davis can be really turnover-prone as well, who's still on the team as the starting point guard for North Carolina next year. But Elliot Cadeau could fix that for North Carolina. If he's able to play this season, maybe as the starting point guard, or maybe he can play next to RJ Davis, or even just coming off the bench for RJ Davis, put the pressure on RJ Davis to play even better in this next season in college basketball so he won't lose his starting job. But regardless of the role that Elliot Cadeau will have for North Carolina next season, this is huge news for the Tar Heels because he's a really talented player. The only issue that could creep up for Elliot Cadeau is that he is going to be reclassifying, and it's always tough to reclassify in college basketball, especially when you're a point guard. There have been tons of examples in college basketball where a player reclassifies, especially as a point guard, and they do really struggle in college basketball and they don't have a lot of success. But Elliot Cadeau is already 18 years old, so it's not like he's too young. I think that he will be fine. This actually should be his class anyway, but when he was born, kind of fell at that weird time where he had to go to school a year after when he was probably supposed to be going to school. So he is 18 years old. It's not like he's 17 years old and too young for college basketball. I think he can handle it, but he will have to gain some weight, probably around 10 to 15 pounds if possible, before he plays for North Carolina next year. But however Hubert Davis uses Elliot Cadeau, whether off the bench or in the starting lineup, this is huge for North Carolina because he's a great basketball player, and I think he should definitely make the Tar Heels roster more talented and deeper next season. But looking at North Carolina's roster, Caleb Love is gone, so I do think that getting Elliot Cadeau to reclassify is big because they can have another facilitator possibly out there on the floor to make North Carolina a much better team at passing the ball to their teammates and having more assists than they did last year. Because North Carolina, they brought in some shooters. You've got Cormac Ryan transferring in from Notre Dame, and Cormac Ryan is a guy that shoots the ball at a high level from three. His three-point shooting percentage wasn't too pretty at Notre Dame last year, but he was on a fairly bad basketball team going over to North Carolina. I think that three-point shooting percentage should improve tremendously with RJ Davis returning for North Carolina at point guard. If he improves on not turning it over and having better players around him, he should improve at that. And now having Elliot Cadeau as well should definitely help out Cormac Ryan. Harrison Ingram's transferring to North Carolina from Stanford, and Harrison Ingram's a former McDonald's All-American. I think Cormac Ryan and Harrison Ingram can definitely play next to RJ Davis in the starting lineup, and even Elliot Cadeau if he does come off the bench. Both those players are solid. Harrison Ingram doesn't shoot the basketball that well from the three-point line, but he should be able to improve with him not having to be the focal point of the offense at North Carolina like he was at Stanford. All the teams in the Pac-12 were hounding Harrison Ingram because they knew he was Stanford's best player. Now he should be able to have more success at North Carolina, not having to be the focal point of the offense. I think he definitely will be an improved player for North Carolina next season. Jalen Withers is a forward that's transferring in from Louisville. He's a really solid player as well. He could start at the 4. I'm not 100% sure if he will start at the 4 for North Carolina, depending on how Hubert Davis wants to do the starting lineup, but he could be a guy that starts at the 4. He was really solid at Louisville this past season. He is a guy that I think can improve as well. And Armando Bacot is back. That's huge as well for the Tar Heels. RJ Davis and Armando Bacot both returning gives you some roster continuity for Hubert Davis. And Armando Bacot's one of the best centers in college basketball. Yes, he can't shoot. He's not the quickest player in the world. which is why he's still in college basketball. But for what he is, he's a great post player. He's a great rebounder. I think he should have another great season and possibly an All-American yet again in college basketball for the Tar Heels next season, and will definitely help out Elliot Cadeau and RJ Davis. Having that reliable big man that you can pass the ball to down low at all times, that is always a great luxury to have for point guards. And I do think that North Carolina's starting five, if it's going to be RJ Davis, Cormac, Ryan, Harrison Ingram, Jalen Withers, and Armando Bacot, that is a fantastic starting five, a deadly starting five that should be one of the best in college basketball next season and should help North Carolina have a better year next season, because based on talent alone, the North Carolina Tar Heels are a top 25 team next season, and they should be an NCAA tournament team. But one thing that is tossed from last year, you can never project in the preseason how good a team's going to be. North Carolina was the preseason #1 team, and they didn't even make the tournament this past season. They had all the roster continuity in the world, it just did not work out. But I do think that North Carolina this year has a really talented roster that should make the NCAA tournament if everything comes together. And you look at the rest of the roster, we're not even done yet. They've brought in Paxton Wojcik, a guard transfer from Brown that could start in his own right, but he probably will come off the bench for North Carolina because they got in Cormac Ryan. But he wants to play for a winning program, even if it's off the bench. I think Paxton Wojcik is going to be a solid rotational player for the Tar Heels next season. He's a guy that does not demand the basketball in his hands. He's a great three-point shooter, and I think also, like Cormac Ryan, will up the ante for North Carolina and helping the Tar Heels shoot better from the three-point line next season, then be much more efficient on not taking as many bad shots like RJ Davis and Caleb Love took for the Tar Heels last year. I think Paxton Wojcik and Cormac Ryan will do a much better job at shooting the three for North Carolina, especially having talented point guards like RJ Davis and Elliot Cadeau to pass the ball to them. North Carolina also has two more four-star freshmen coming in Zayden High and Simeon Wilcher. Zayden High is a power forward, and Simeon Wilcher is a guard. I think both those players can learn behind the starting unit for North Carolina and be able to develop and get better. And just adding Elliot Cadeau to that class makes North Carolina's freshman class one of the better classes in college basketball. To boot, along with their transfer portal class, is one of the best in college basketball. North Carolina has retooled this roster, and they've done a great job bringing talent in. And Seth Trimble and Jalen Washington are back, two four-star freshmen from the 2022 class for North Carolina. They're two guys that could improve this next season if they can get some playing time. North Carolina's roster is loaded at every position. There is depth at the point guard position now with RJ Davis and Elliot Cadeau. You've got Paxton Wojcik and Cormac Ryan at the 2, Harrison Ingram, and a plethora of guys you can play at the 3. And then you've got Jalen Withers, Jalen Washington at the 4, and then Armando Bacot at center. You can go small when Armando Bacot's on the bench. They just have a talented team up and down the roster. I think North Carolina's going to be a much better passing team next year. I think North Carolina's going to be a much better shooting team next year. And even though they are losing players like Caleb Love to transfer portal, it's a tough loss. He's a really talented player. Puff Johnson's gone as well. He's in the transfer portal. Leaky Black graduated. Pete Nance graduated. It's tough for North Carolina to lose all that talent. But again, the most important thing in the transfer portal and in college basketball recruiting in each offseason for a team is you got to win those battles. You have to be a better team after the transfer portal moves, after the college basketball recruiting additions than you were before. And North Carolina, with the additions that they've made, I think we can safely say that North Carolina has a better roster right now than they did before this offseason ended. So North Carolina, they've got a fantastic roster. It's just got to all come together. Hubert Davis, I don't think he's on the hot seat right now, but with another bad season, Hubert Davis could be in a lot of trouble at North Carolina, because with this much talent, you should not lose. But Elliot Cadeau reclassifying is the icing on the proverbial cake. North Carolina's roster is loaded at every position. I think the only position you could say maybe they're a little weak is center, because they don't really have anybody behind Armando Bacot, but again, they can go small with the amount of forwards and wings that they have. I think North Carolina should be fine next season in that regard. Bacot can play most of the game anyway. North Carolina's looking really good for next year. Elliot Cadeau, as long as he can acclimate to the college game, should be a great player for North Carolina next season, even if it's coming off the bench, and then he can star in his own role once RJ Davis is gone the next season for North Carolina. I think it's a pretty solid move for Elliot Cadeau, especially if he does have success for North Carolina next year, to be able to get acclimated to the college game early. But for North Carolina overall, this is fantastic because it makes their team even deeper than it was last year. And definitely a lot of teams in the ACC are looking at the North Carolina roster, and they know the Tar Heels are looking pretty dangerous for next season in college basketball. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Like this video down below. Comment down below what you think about Elliot Cadeau reclassifying to the North Carolina Tar Heels for the 2023 season. Whether you think Elliot Cadeau is ready for college basketball, and how good of a job you think Hubert Davis has done in this offseason for the Tar Heels overall to rebuild the roster. Follow me on Twitter as well. Link is in the description, and I will see you next time.